Are you satisfied with the pool at the end of the year?
Yeah, I love player development. Like, that's the thing I'm most passionate about. And I knew that our players, compared to the top European teams, over a 4-year period, our players actually play one full season less than those players. Most people don't know that.
Emma Hayes is here. Emma, so good to see you. A quarter of your roster is represented here tonight. No better place to be, right?
No, there isn't. And it's so great to think that so many of them are getting to play for a championship today, because in my position, I want to see which players can handle the pressure with not just the crowd, the expectations, but how they handle that. So it's going to be a great final for me to watch.
How much communication do you guys have with them ahead of this game? Like, have you told them that, I want to see you handle this pressure?
I don't tell them, no, I never interfere with what they're doing. Like, they didn't know I was here.
Okay.
No,
but they could probably feel your presence.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they can. They know they're going to see me in camp, but I'm very much about when you're at your clubs, what you do at your clubs. I don't want to be a distraction to that. So, but I also get the chance to experience next week with them, and so I'm going to have a really high one side of the locker room and a really low side, so I'm going to have to think about how I manage that.
That's tough to manage. And speaking of players on both sides of that, Jay Hal's back in camp, Corey Bethune is back in camp. I've been so impressed with their growth throughout this season. What's impressed you that brought them back in to the last camp of the year?
Well, first of all, I value consistency in performance, and I think with Croy, everybody knows she's a talent, but so often we're always asking, why don't we bring players back? Sometimes before they've even played 3 or 4 games collectively. You've got to be fit, healthy, be consistent in your behaviours both sides of the ball. I think Croy, we know she's a wonderful attacking talent. She's got to do it defensively too, and I think I've seen a step up in her game there. I think for Hal, she's been a player I've watched since she was a rookie when I was the coach at Chelsea, and I think this year she's added another level to her game in her decision making and execution in possession. I think she's been very good in the playoffs, again showing the qualities of an experienced player, that when it matters she can show up and perform. And I haven't seen her, so I could have waited until January camp, but I felt this was the right moment to do it.
Coach Hayes, this is surreal. My former coach here. How do you advise players who come to you looking for some advice when they're thinking about maybe making a major change in their career, whether that's changing clubs, changing leagues? And I know they seek your advice.
I do what I always do, which is listen and try to work through all of the different talking points. And for some of them, they're working that out. They're trying to work through what it is they want and what they need, and they have a lot of people to support with that. They might ask me questions like, what are your thoughts? I've got 2 years left on my contract. How do you think, I could progress with this or with that? And sometimes it might be just giving them football advice within their environments, and some of it will just be to seek to understand something they've always wanted to do for them. Some players want to go and play abroad. You know this, you did it yourself. They've always wanted to do that, whereas some players have no desire whatsoever to leave the US. So it's finding what works for them and then just help guide them the best way that I can.
Emma, I've loved watching the evolution of the player pool. When you first became the coach, that was a big goal that you talked about. And now we see so many players that have caps, that have the call-ups. You've brought the U23s back to life. Are you satisfied with the pool at the end of the year?
Yeah, I love player development. Like, that's the thing I'm most passionate about. And I knew that our players, compared to the top European teams, over a 4-year period, our players actually play one full season less than those players. Most people don't know that. So how are we gonna close that gap in a meaningful way? First was to make the under-23s an extension of the WNT with meaningful matches. So they're going to play England this week. And put players in situations where they can accumulate the body of experiences that are required, and then recognise which ones are ready for now and which ones are ready for later, and plan for 27, 28, 31 with all of that in mind, and create a system that's joined up. and also bring players to camp where they come away from it and they're like, I want more of this. Well, great. Go back to your clubs and be better there, because you've got to raise the standards of the league. That's something that's really important too.
Speaking of the player pool, you spoke about at the, I guess, midpoint of this year, you said, I will know who is part of the pool and who is not. What does that number look like? Because most rosters are 23, I think all now. It used to be 18 sometimes for me. 27 come into camp, but there are people who come into camps, don't, Croy's, this is her first time back in a while, so how big is that pool of players that really you're looking at?
I think you have to look, first of all, that there's a couple of things. What's the size of the World Cup roster going to be?
Right, is 23 or is it going to be 20?
At least 23.
Right.
2, you can now put 5 substitutes on the field. I think that changes something too. So, is there a nucleus of players that I think have been consistently in? Yeah, probably about 15 to 18 players, some of which I haven't had the opportunity since the Olympics last year, been able to select, some through pregnancy, some through injury that haven't been there. So I think it always fluctuates, because the reality is I don't know who's going to be available come the Olympics. But what I don't want to do is arrive at that point, to the World Cup and say, you know what, Emily Fox, outstanding #1 fullback for us, for whatever reason, might not be available for the first game. Oh, Avery Patterson, for example, this is your first time of trying. Can't do it. But then what you can't do is develop a player against the easiest opponents. So you have to be prepared to lose something. Not always the result, but sometimes losing in short term will give us something down the line. And that's what I've seen in our group in the last 6 months. Whether it's Lily, whether it's Claire, whether it's Avery, whether it's Lily Real, they're just improving as a result of the exposures and the experiences, and that for me is what I'm most passionate about.
Emma, just before we let you go, you kind of came in a bit of a transitional moment for the US women's national team. If you could bring one player back to join this group, is there anybody in particular?
Listen, I want to stay in this job for a long time. There is zero chance I would ever pick a player that I think I'd like to bring back, because there's just too many. There really are. There's too many. This program produces so much, and as I say every day, I just pinch myself. I've got the best job in the world, and I'm just grateful to have the players that I already have.
Oh, good answer. We tried, Kelley.
We tried.
Listen, I didn't want you to ask that question because I knew it was going to be me.
Kelley was like, put me on my single and put her under pressure. Didn't work in the end, though.
Sorry,
Emma,
sorry.
thanks so much. We've got so much more to come.